Hello, welcome to the Be Well Now Method podcast. I am here today with Gretchen Holmes. Uh, Dr. Holmes I am so excited to talk to her today. I am reading her book, um, and it's The Work in Between. And I highly, highly recommend this book. It's such an interesting read about Gretchen's life. I'm going to share with you a little bit of her background and then we'll get into talking. So Gretchen has a PhD in health communication, which to me is amazing after working in healthcare for almost 40 years. Like we need people like Gretchen to help us know how to communicate. And Gretchen's story, she has had cancer 3 times. She's lost over 100 pounds and has had this incredible life of dealing with health issues with not only herself but her family, and just I think has a lot of personal information to share, but also a lot of good wisdom and research-based wisdom. So I'm going to get into it and let her share her wisdom. So thank you, Gretchen, for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love the work that you do, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you. Well, likewise. So I always start with a meditation. I'd like to kind of start with that just to help us both get centered and the listeners get centered, and so that we can take in this information in the well state. So if you'd like, close your eyes or just let your eyes focus on something. A nice exhale. Let your body settle into where it can hold you. And just feel your breath is taking care of you, as the reminder that there's nothing you have to do right now. You can just be and let your whole person take in what's here now. And then let that breath bring your awareness to your center, where you know what's most important to you, what you value. Let that breath keep you there so that you can stay connected to what's important to you about investing this time in your health and your well-being. And then expand that awareness to your body and notice if there's any place in your body that would like to move, and whether that's a gentle touch or a massage or a big stretch or even getting up and standing. Trust that your body knows what it needs right now and let the movement take care of you. Let your body take care of you. And as you let your body fill up with presence through moving, bring your attention back to your breath and your heart and the room. Keep that attention on your center as you gently open your eyes and join us back. So Gretchen, I always like to start with kind of what's happening with you right now in this moment. Where are you at? Just kind of a check-in. And I'm going to let my dog in for a moment. She can't stand being left out of these podcasts. So tell me, like, where you're at right now with your mission, what's going on? What are you feeling good about?
Yeah, so, there's so much. And I have to say, one of the greatest gifts I have received from getting into this space has been the connections that I have made with, not only people like yourself, but people I would have never in my wildest dreams ever thought I would connect with. And to me, this is all about not only telling our story, but telling our story so that we can authentically connect. And so I am every day I am amazed at the types of connections that I'm making and the people who are reaching out, and just the what is happening, because we're putting, or I guess me in this case, I'm putting out really honest, vulnerable stories, and that seems to be resonating with people. And it's wonderful to not have to be anything other than who you really just are.
So I'm hearing so much from your communication wisdom there and training about, and I love what you said, sharing your story so you can authentically connect. And is there a process for that? Like, is there a process that you use to authentically connect?
So what I stay very mindful of is, especially now, all the social media, which is wonderful in so many ways, really does a disservice because we're always seeing everybody else's highlight reels, where everybody is sharing all the great news and all of the
Right.
positive changes and the amazing things that have happened. But rarely do we have people talking about how hard it is when you're not achieving all those things, just getting through the day, trying to deal with all of our demons and things that we've always had to deal with, but nobody likes to talk about. And I learned from a very young age. I didn't know this is what I was doing, but I
Mm.
learned that I had to talk about stuff. I had to talk about the bad stuff
Yeah.
because number one, I was too young to understand what all of this even was, growing up
Yeah.
in an alcoholic home, having, to deal with all of the traumas that go with that. And then my older brother, who was a hemophiliac, being in the hospital all the time, and all of the just, we all have war stories and we can all tell them. But
Mm.
I learned very young that if I didn't talk about it and
Mm.
be honest about whatever was going on, it made me physically sick.
Yeah. Wow.
And I couldn't
Wow.
carry that. And I realized also that my dad's alcoholism was not my burden to carry.
Mm.
That was not my shame to carry.
Right.
And I think part of that's because my parents never made us feel like it was ours, but
Yeah.
obviously we were affected very deeply
Yeah.
by it.
Yeah.
But I think it's just how I've always been. I
Yeah.
try to sugarcoat stuff, and I can't because it's not honest and it's not me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just who I am. And
Yeah.
but the biggest thing about this is when I talk about things that are deeply personal and often hard,
Yeah.
it heals me
Mm.
because I'm not carrying it around in my head,
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
terrible place to be if you're
Yeah.
carrying around
Right.
all
Oh,
this stuff.
oh, and in your
And nobody
body.
can carry that all by themselves. It is,
Yeah.
we are meant to
Yeah.
share and connect and
Mm.
help carry each other's burdens.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
probably the biggest thing that I realize is how
Mm.
healing it is for me.
Yeah. It sounds like it's not just sharing it and unloading your burden. The way you're sharing it is somewhere between this kind of drama narrative of, oh, I have all this stuff going on, and kind of unloading to somebody. It's being honest. It's just saying, this is my wholeness. This is everything of me, in an honest way, but not a dramatic way and not a hiding way. There's a balance
Yeah.
there, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it has been a case of being true to myself,
Mm.
honoring myself. I
Yeah.
deserve to live an authentic existence. I
Yeah.
deserve to be with people who can accept me
Yeah.
when things are not good, when I'm not
Yeah.
in a good space, when I can share things. And I remember when I was a young adult, trying to share things with people, new people you met, whether it's
Yeah.
somebody you were dating or a new
Yeah.
friend, and being really nervous about, are they going to accept this
Mm.
about my background, my where I come from,
Yeah.
who I
Yeah.
am. And
Yeah.
I thought, if we can't be honest about who we are,
Right.
everything is built on that. So
Yeah.
that foundation becomes really shaky. And then
Yeah.
we have to put on our masks. Then we
Mm.
have to pretend. Then we have to become people. We become chameleons so that we're certain people with this person, and we're another person with that. And while
Mm.
I understand we have to shift and be different things at different, we should always be able to be
Yeah.
true to who we are. Because if
Yeah.
we aren't, it creates a lot of conflict, and
Yeah.
we're the ones who have to walk around with that and make
Yeah.
sense out of it.
Yeah.
So there are people, I'm sure, who do not like me. There are people I do not like.
Yeah.
We don't click. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That means I'm being me.
Right. Right. You're not bending to what somebody else needs. And it
Mm,
sounds like this is a skill that I would guess had to happen internally first before you could do it externally.
yeah.
Is there a process that you went to? I mean, what I was amazed at when I'm reading the book, I'm amazed at your sense of self. And I don't know whether, I'm curious as to whether that was already there, even as a teenager and living in an alcoholic household and all of that. There was this sense of self of, I don't even know how to word it, but I don't know whether that came later in retrospect writing the book, or do you think it was always there inside of you?
I think it was always there.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it.
Okay.
I couldn't hardly, if you'd have asked me when I was 15 or 20, I don't think I could have articulated it at all.
Yeah.
And the process of writing the book did a lot of things,
Okay.
obviously. It was very therapeutic. It helped me remember things I had forgotten. It helped me deal with things that I thought I'd already dealt with.
Mm.
But doing a kind of a retrospective of your life and looking back and going, how do I make that make sense to myself?
Yeah.
That was a really powerful process.
Mm.
And it also allowed me in some ways to reframe the experience. So while it might have been a really awful thing to go through, and admittedly, I've gone through a lot of really awful stuff, but a lot of people have gone through a lot of awful stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to diminish what I went through at all.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm just saying that going back and looking at some of them, I look at things that happened to me when I was 10 or 20,
Mm.
and I'm looking at it now with 62-year-old eyes.
Yeah.
I see different value in it.
Mm.
And I see the protectiveness that my family so desperately tried to make sure was in place.
Yeah.
Did we all fail? Yes, terribly. But
Yeah.
it was not an intentional infliction of pain at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom did the best she could, and in a lot of ways so did my dad. I mean,
Yeah.
he's not the
Yeah.
villain.
Yeah.
He had alcoholism, he had some mental health issues, he had drug addiction. Anybody coming from a home that has experienced those things
Yeah.
can see,
Yeah.
how you love them, but man, you don't like them very well.
Yeah.
And there's so much anxiety and so much fear and pain and sadness
Mm.
and anxiety and all those things. And so what I did realize was that's where, of course, my overeating started. I started self-soothing with food
Yeah.
because you can only be so sad, so anxious, so upset for so long.
Right. Right.
You've got to do something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
exercise wasn't a part of our family.
Yeah.
Movement wasn't
Yeah.
at that time, nor was necessarily eating really healthy. So I
Yeah.
started closet eating, and food just made me feel better.
Yeah. I mean, it works.
It
There's
does.
a
It's a
reason it's
great
a huge
drug.
industry, right? It
Yeah.
works, and then they've really perfected it.
That's, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep. Um, so it sounds like the importance of going back. I mean, you don't have to write a book to do it, but the importance of going back and reframing your past and understanding it now with the wisdom that you have now sounds like it's a really important process to showing up authentically and connecting authentically.
It is.
Yeah.
I think many of us walk through life not really engaging in that behavior. I think we just assume we are who we are and everything is okay. We kind of stay a little surfacey
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
And I think when things are happening around, or we are not reaching the goals that are important to us, like
Mhm.
in a case of weight, which is just
Yeah.
super easy to talk about,
Right.
is so if we're overweight or obese,
Yeah.
and we don't go back and start figuring out some of those things and healing some of those things,
Right.
we are never going to be able to really address
Yeah.
why we are overweight or obese or morbidly obese in my case. And I think if we don't go back and address those things about
Mhm.
where are the traumas, everybody has them,
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
And to pretend you don't, I don't think lets you live an authentic life. And I think
Yeah.
we have to go back and look at them and heal from them
Yeah.
and process them and figure out, well, what did I gain from this, if anything? If not, I have to let this go because I can't, as my mom would say, you can't build a mountain to all these bad things. You can't let them all define you. But
Wow.
if you don't go back and address them, then they're still there. You're just
Yeah.
lugging them around with you. I think
Right.
a lot of freedom for me
Yeah.
happened when I went back
Mm.
And I looked at those things, and I did
Mm.
it with a therapist, and I
Okay.
did it with a coach.
Yeah.
I did it with my husband. I mean, I
Yeah.
talked to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, then I was free.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
freedom is really important.
Yeah. Freedom is everything, right?
It
Like,
is.
especially when you're carrying weight after talking to people for 20 years about this, one on one and hearing it. And I hear what you're saying. And I think this is what I see as missing, right, in the weight loss industry. And
Yeah.
I know that you're, that's why this work that you're doing is so important. This work in between when you decide you want to lose weight and you take a medication or you do surgery or you start a diet or you start exercising, that work in between is it. And what you're describing, is there a process for that, Gretchen? Like, if there's somebody who
Yeah.
is like, yeah, you know what, I think you're right. I think there's something else going on here that a pill is not going to fix, or a diet's not going to fix, or even
Yeah.
losing weight isn't going to fix.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
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 So I think it's different for different people. The great news is there are
Mm.
so many tools now. Yeah, did therapy help me? Yes. Should I have gone 40, 50 years ago? Absolutely. But I did some work with a therapist. I
Mhm.
did some work with a transformational coach. And not
Yeah.
everybody necessarily can afford to do that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the work I had to do myself.
Mm.
And part of it was the homework I got
Okay.
in between sessions with my
Yeah.
coach.
Yeah.
But other things that you can do, I mean, there's a lot of online counseling
Hmm. Yeah.
that never was there before.
Hmm.
There are support groups that are
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
You can go and look. You can look online. You can go look at your church. You can look at some of your city
Mm.
and county programs.
Yeah.
If you're going through grief, there's all sorts of grief support,
Yeah.
or there's a lot of books and
Mm.
journaling that
Mm.
are really, really good. I mean, one of the books that comes to mind if you're going through grief, Rob Party
Mm.
is just brilliant in this field. So is Maria Lessie.
Okay.
If you're looking at your health, there's so many books out there that ask you questions, and then you write answers to them and you think about them, and they help you process. So there's more help out there than ever.
Right.
And I think the important thing is to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it may not be where you stay. It may
Yeah.
not be the thing you do forever, but start somewhere, and then you'll be surprised at what opens up, what awareness comes to you. And you're like, oh no, I thought it was this. It's that.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And
Okay.
and so I think a combination of a lot of things, but I want to go on record and say, the medications that are out there, the surgery, the different programs. I used Weight Watchers, happened to work for me, but there's lots of different programs.
Yeah.
They're all tools.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
all tools, and
Yeah.
whatever combinations that you need to achieve health,
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
but those will not fix
Yeah.
inherently what is going on inside.
Yeah.
That will help you live a sustainable, healthy life, and that
Yeah.
is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, not just that
Yeah.
number on the
No.
scale. That
Yeah.
is the least important thing here.
Right. It really is that whole person piece. So just to kind of break that down into maybe some steps, like finding some kind of structured program or support, whether it's a book or a program
Mhm.
or a counselor, something, or a combination of things, and trusting your own intuition to know what's right for you, what's
Mhm.
not. But then not just kind of saying, okay, this program is going to fix me, but actually doing it, writing down, talking about it, getting in there and being willing to take a mindful look at it, right? And look at it from an
Yeah.
objective point of view, not a shameful point of view. And I think that's, I don't know, maybe we need to talk about shame a little bit, because I think that's a roadblock, right? When you have
Oh,
weight or anything, even health
yeah.
issues that are lifestyle driven, there's a
Yeah.
lot of shame, like, oh, I did this to myself. And I just think we're not doing a service when we talk about how people can change their lifestyle, when we don't
Yeah.
say that you're not a problem. Your body's not a problem.
Yeah.
we're just going
Yeah.
to work on this. Yeah. So,
Yeah. So at the end of my podcast, I have a tagline that says, don't wait to love yourself. You're already worthy. Or don't wait till you feel worthy. You're already worthy. The only way to good health is to love yourself. I truly believe that.
I love it.
But you can't wait till you just love yourself. Like,
Right.
okay, I'm good. I really
Yeah.
love myself.
Yeah.
It's you take one step in this direction, you
Yeah.
take another step and you get some awareness there, and you think, wow,
Yeah.
why did I talk to myself that way? I got
Mm.
to figure out why do I always call myself an idiot? Why, sometimes we even say it out loud, and
Yeah.
sometimes we say it out loud in front of people. Why do I do that?
Mm.
Maybe I can reframe that
Mm.
and stop talking to myself so negatively, and we wouldn't let somebody else talk to us that way. Why do we do that? That's a step. That is a
Yeah.
concrete thing. Start paying attention to how you talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Not only when you're around other people and what you say out loud, but
Yeah.
what you say in your head to
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And that starts the ball rolling. But around the idea of shame, look, no, when you're overweight or obese or morbidly obese, there is so much shame around that. Some of it is from the outside. You get family members, you get strangers, you get organizations, in books, in social media, that it's horrific. It's a wonder anybody walks outside their door.
Yeah.
It is so bad.
Yeah.
However, I will say, and I said in my book, what people have said to me over the years is nothing compared to what I have said to myself.
Mm.
No matter if I failed at something, and inevitably I failed at losing weight, I beat myself up so badly that it would be years before I would try it again.
Yeah.
And that's on me. I had to
Mm.
figure out why I was beating myself up so badly. What I found once I started losing weight and doing the work is I'm human. I'm emotional.
Mm.
I do things that are not healthy for me. I eat pretty clean for the most part. However, it's the holidays,
Mhm.
and I am eating way more food than I normally do.
Yeah.
And I decided when I joined Weight Watchers, if I was going to eat something that I did not plan to eat, but I want to, either really enjoy it and let it go,
Yeah.
or don't eat it. Because if you eat it and then feel guilty about it
Right.
or feel ashamed about it, why bother eating it? Life
Yeah.
is to be enjoyed. Somebody
Right.
told me that I had to never eat pie again. It's not for me.
Yeah.
That's not a life I want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we have to give ourselves grace, but we don't have to give ourselves all sorts of excuses as to why we are not able to achieve the goals we're looking for. And there's a big difference
Yeah.
between giving ourselves grace and going, if your friend did that, you would say, I hope you enjoyed that
Right.
pie. But you do it and you insult yourself for days. And that's not fair. Nothing good comes from that. Nothing.
Yeah. So this internal dialogue, this internal communication is the first step, is the way to then, that's the work in between, is how am I talking to myself? Just like if you said, how am I talking to my husband or my wife or my friend or
Yeah.
my child? How am I showing up? How am I responding when they mess up? All of that.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that for yourself. Yeah.
I believe that because
Yeah.
I've always said, and I used to teach interpersonal communication and nonverbal communication and all those wonderful classes that I adore.
Yeah.
And I've always said, if you don't like a relationship with someone, if relationship feels tense or off or not authentic, look at the communication first. Number one is tangible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's objective. Yes, I said that. Why did I say that? But communication creates reality. It creates how we exist and how we engage with each other, whether we say something or we don't say something. Sometimes it's what we don't say. But the same thing is true about ourselves. So if we don't like the way our lives are, how we're moving through this life, and we don't like certain parts of our lives, well, let's start with something that we really can easily identify. This isn't like subtle, like, I wonder if I'm talking to myself in a bad way. No, you are, because you've just called yourself an idiot. You've just, I mean, so it's just something that I found is a really tangible thing we can look at. And it's not easy to accept the fact that we talk to ourselves that way, but it is something we can change.
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay. Is there a process for that? This looking at your self-talk, listening to your self-talk, and then changing your self-talk?
Yeah. So it's really about awareness.
Okay.
It is really about being present.
Yeah.
Because we all move through our days and we forget what we even did, said, ate, whatever, talked to. It's about slowing down and being really present in the moment. And we all know that feeling when we have walked away from some kind of an interaction where we went, wow, that doesn't feel very good. Why am I feeling anxious or bad?
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. Don't dismiss it. Don't say, oh, I'm being too sensitive. Don't be, oh, it's not important. It absolutely is so important to stop at that moment. And think about what just happened there, and why am I feeling bad? Is it something somebody said to me? Is it something I said to somebody about me? Or is it something I said to myself? What did I say? What? Is there a way I can stop myself in the future?
Yeah.
I mean, coming up with a trigger, a word that will go, next time I would have that feeling, I can stop and look at that again. And if you start to see a pattern, then you can say things like, you know what, moving forward, I may not say anything positive, but I'm not saying anything.
Nice.
Let's
that sounds
start
like a really
there.
doable thing.
Yeah.
That you're not going to flip it right away, but you're going to, just recognize it and stop the cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't say a word. Just go, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. In the future, when those things still keep happening, then you can come up with your own scripts. You can say things like, I didn't get the outcome I wanted, and I was embarrassed.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think I learned something. Okay, what did I learn? And you can do that. You can say things like, well, there's some data. I'll just take it and move on. Yeah. Anything to neutralize that negative nastiness that we have toward ourselves. And even in doing that, you'll notice that you treat yourself better.
Yeah.
And you're going to get addicted to treating yourself better. But this takes time. This is nothing that you can do over the course of a week or a month. Because awareness is so tricky, because we walk through life, so many of us, just in a fog. We're just doing the next thing we have to do. And we're not really very present. So slowing down and acknowledging our feelings and embracing those things and not dismissing them as we tend to do, which is so unhealthy. They're signals. Yeah. We have to attend to them.
So this foundational ability to know that when your body tells you something, when you have that instinctive, embodied sense of something's off, it's time to stop and pause and get really curious. That's where the good stuff is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love the word curious.
Yeah.
Because it's a non-judgmental zone. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I don't want people to stop and go, wow, that was worse than I thought it was. And I really screwed that up. No. Yeah. Stop and go, what just happened? And why did I say that? Why would it? Now, sometimes we do that. It's just our natural response. Well, that's what we're trying to stop, right? Yeah. Sometimes being self-deprecating is funny and it helps relieve tension. Except that there's pain behind all of that. There's a lack of self-acceptance and self-worth behind all of that. And we will never start making progress if we don't stop and look at it and see what's going on.
So, and I think if you think like, oh, I always do that, it's overwhelming. The first place to start is just by being present. And this is where those mindfulness skills of curiosity with an element of kindness, like, oh, I wonder why that's happening. Not curiosity like beating yourself up and looking for the way that you can, continue to beat yourself up and what you did wrong, but wondering what's behind it, what's below the surface, and this slowing down. Yeah. And this, I fell in love with your mom through this book. Oh my gosh, I fell in love with your mom. And one of the things you said early on in the book was, I think your mom said it, right? Like, don't compare your insides to somebody else's outsides.
Still working on that.
I've said that to a few patients and clients this week, and it was really, I think that is so profound because we have so many outsides to look at, social media and other people, and so many externals that we are in a natural state of comparison. It's just who we are to compare to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you learned about that statement and how that, I'm sure, it's...
Well, I'm still working on that, by the way.
It's a lifelong skill.
It is. But my mom had no idea how wise, how amazing she was. She was always racked with guilt because she didn't leave my dad earlier, and we left dad, I don't know how many times, we threw our clothes in garbage bags, and then we'd go stay with grandma, and she felt so guilty when in all honesty, she was what was holding us up. She always held us up, and her heart was so huge, and she was so unconditional in the love she had for us kids, for her friends, for her family, for my dad. I mean, if you look at they had a love story that started when they were like 14. I mean, and it was a great love story, except there was addiction, and that messes everything up.
Yeah.
But my mom was so strong. Oh my Lord, she was so strong. And so when she would always say, because we ended up in Al-Anon, because my dad was in AA, and that helped a lot, by the way, that if you're dealing with somebody else's addictions, Al-Anon, Alateen, even if the person is not seeking help, please do. And you will learn a lot about yourself there, because, in some cases, that's where a lot of that gets heaped upon you, and you accept it, and you learn in Al-Anon, that's not how it works. So my mom always said, and I don't know where she got it, but don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. And it was a lesson that I struggled with always. And I still do to a point, because it's kind of a default thing and you can't help it. But it is something that is always in the back of my head, so that if I start comparing, which we all know is the thief of joy, I stop myself, because I do hear my mom's voice going, Gretchen, stop it. And you are amazing and whole and perfect and valuable and important, just as you are. If there are things about your life that you want to work on, okay, great, do that. But that doesn't mean just because you weigh 15 or 50 or 100 pounds more than the BMI chart says you are supposed to weigh, that everything else about you is wrong or bad or, damaged, or it's not. Weight is a measure, but it's not a measure of your worth. It's not a measure of who you are as a person, even though that often gets attributed to it. It is not. And so, we can work on that. But to work on that, I figured, as I was going through Weight Watchers, if I worked on my relationship with food, which meant I had to figure out why I was self-soothing with food in the first place, the weight would take care of itself.
Yeah.
And it did.
Mm.
Because once I learned really how to love myself more and treat myself better,
Mm.
it was easier to make those decisions about, well, do you want to keep eating, or are you good? Why are you eating more? Why are you walking into the pantry? What happened?
Yeah.
I start looking at those things, which means I respect myself more. I honor myself more.
Yeah.
Then the weight thing becomes a non-issue.
Yeah. So you really created this internal narrative. What was your combination of what you realized you wanted to switch in your own self-talk, but then pulling in from wise other people in your life who had said things to you and really using those words too. And I like this idea of being able to kind of create this inner narrative that you can lean on, that maybe is more scripted at first, but then becomes your default. Those words start popping in your head more automatically. You're almost rewiring your brain to go to those nerve pathways and those thoughts rather than the old patterns.
Yeah, and I just had someone on my show that is a neuroscientist. Oh my Lord, what a conversation! And we got into those neural pathways.
Oh, cool.
And you can add it. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can rewire them, but it takes time.
Yeah.
That's why we keep trying to do things. And it's really hard when we try to change our behaviors.
Yeah.
But secondly, that's why it's so easy to default to what we used to do, because those pathways, they worked for us. They made us feel better. They gave us dopamine hits. They took the anxiety away. And that's a natural thing to want to do. Yeah. But the more it doesn't mean we aren't going to not be successful every time. Good heavens, that I don't know anybody who did it all right every time and recreated that. It means we have now a consciousness. Now we're aware, and we're like, okay, now I have a choice.
Right.
Which choice am I going to make? And it sounds, you know how many times I've asked myself that in my head? How many times I have said that out loud? All right, Gretchen, you have a choice. What are you going to do?
Wow.
Now, sometimes I go eat the pie or the cake or the whatever. Yeah. But sometimes I don't. Yeah. Sometimes I go, why don't you just go outside? Why don't you go grab a book? Why don't you talk about what's bothering you? Yeah. Whatever. Why don't you just give yourself a minute? It passes. It all will pass. And so I have to talk. I was telling somebody the other day, if people had any idea how much I talk to myself and how many triggers and like safe words I have and these little things that I have to do that keeps me moving in the direction I want to move. Yeah. I fail all the time. I screw up constantly, but I still make better, healthier, kinder choices more often than not. To me, that's a win. Yeah. That's a win.
You're living proof we can rewire it, and there's a process for it, and it's slow and gradual, but it's intentional. It's intentional, and that's what I'm hearing. I think that's what's throughout the book too, and your story and everything you said today is this intentionality of I want this, and this is I'm going to keep doing it intentionally, and that's and that's
it is. It's all about that. It's I met someone at a conference for work, and we were having lunch, and I was talking to her about all this stuff, and she was a physician, and so she was really kind of intrigued about it, and I said, I had kind of an epiphany the other day, and you'd think I don't realize this, and maybe I did, but I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life. I am going to have to be aware and intentional about my eating and also about my mental and emotional health, which is so tied to me eating for the rest of my life. This is my thing, and so I don't get to just wander through life anymore. I don't get to just kind of go, well, I wonder what today's going to bring, and I'm just going to hope that all the right food is going to be around me. That's not how I get to do this. That I can do other things that way, but not this. This is my thing I have to focus on, and I am so grateful that I was able at age 58 after having cancer 3 times, after being diagnosed diabetic, after trying to lose weight my whole life, and I'd lose it and I'd gain it back, of course, I was so grateful that I still had the gift of time to get my A1C under control, which
Yeah.
I did right away,
Yeah.
but that I am able to focus and be intentional
Mm.
and live the rest of my life, however long that is,
Yeah.
in a place that celebrates me.
Yeah.
That's what a gift that is.
Yeah. That's freedom, right?
It is. It
It's
is.
freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a gift. And you're a gift. And I
Oh,
thank you so much, so much. All the things that you mentioned, I want to put in the show notes. So I'll get all the books that you recommended and programs and things like that. Um, and I just really honestly thank you for your courage and your authenticity and your willingness to put this out there, Gretchen. It is, if you, I would be very sad if your story got lost and your wisdom got lost. And I'm so glad it's in this book
oh,
now. And I really encourage everyone to read it because it's an
oh,
interesting read and it's very, I think it's inspiring, but it's also thought provoking. It makes you think about your own life and what's my story and, how would I tell it? And even if you don't get it down on paper, it's still valuable information, like you said, to be able to do that work that we're not doing other places. We have to do it for ourselves. And we've got to
yeah.
see that that's important work.
Yeah. And nobody can do it for us.
Nobody can do
And
it for you.
because everybody's journey is
Yeah.
so different
Yeah.
and experience is so different. And one of the nicest things that anybody wrote to me about this book was they said they were afraid to read it because they were afraid. They didn't want to read it because they were afraid of what they were going to learn about themselves.
Huh.
And I said, please don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Because if you're reading this book and it's the right time,
Mm.
you will learn things about yourself, but that's a gift.
Yeah.
If this is what's
Yeah.
going to help you identify some things, that's a
Right.
gift.
Right.
And so she wrote back and she said, she said, I did read it and it unlocked some things that I had been struggling with.
Wow.
It helped me identify those things.
Wow.
And I thought that is the whole reason I'm doing this, because it's
Yeah.
not a self-help book. I'm not
Yeah.
telling anybody how to do anything
Right.
because I can't.
Yeah.
We all
Yeah.
have our own stuff. But
Yeah.
I do hope it helps people. It empowers them. It helps bring about some awareness
Yeah.
to have the courage to start working on themselves because they're important.
Yeah.
There's just, and I realized at one point in my life was just as important as everybody else's. And all of the effort and energy that I've been putting into helping other people achieve a better life and their life goals, I needed to do that for myself. But I never felt worthy until I started doing all this work, this internal work. And now I do. And not only do I feel worthy, and not only am I putting a lot of effort and energy into my own dreams,
Yeah.
I'm asking other people to support them and help me too. And that's a huge shift for
Yeah.
me. That's
Yeah.
huge. But the difference is, I can't even tell you what the difference is. It's
Hmm.
amazing and
Yeah.
it's fun and it makes you feel good,
Yeah.
and people enjoy being around you when you think you are valuable. It's a
Yeah.
whole different dynamic, and
Yeah.
I have really enjoyed that part of my life. So
Yeah.
I keep learning.
Yeah. It's a process and we don't have to be
Uh,
afraid of ourselves. We
no,
just start where we are and get
yep,
curious and be very kind to yourself, knowing you have value. And
that's
you
right.
remind us of that. And I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
Any last words or any advice for somebody who is interested in starting or getting to know you more? Where can they find you?
Sure. I'm easy to find. I'm all over LinkedIn. I also have a website, GretchenHolmesPhD.com. Those are the two places that are the easiest way to find me. I would love it if folks reached out. There's ways to contact me in both places. You can find my book on my website or on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. There's a Kindle version. There's my podcast, The Work in Between, all of those things. Please, take a look. And if you think I can help in any way, just let me know. I'm really excited. I'm enjoying getting to know folks this way and talking about my journey, because every time I do, I get healed more.
Mm,
So
it's
there's a little
mutual.
selfish component here,
Yeah.
because it just I help lift myself up
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well, we're all connected, right? The more healed
Yeah,
you are, the more healed I am, and vice versa. So
that's right.
we're all connected. So it's a beautiful thing that you're
It is.
growing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, Gretchen. Thank you so much. What a joy to talk to you and get to know you better. And thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Janet, and thank you for the work you're doing. And I can't wait to see what happens next for both
Me
of
too.
us.
Me too. Awesome.